But first, I want to say how great it is to be here in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I believe we're going to get some ice cream afterwards, and I think there's already some debate about which place we should go to. So hopefully we're not going to cause any Eau Claire rivalries here. But I'm excited about it, and we've had a good day. We actually just saw the vice president's plane on the tarmac. We landed about the same time that she did. And I went over there because I thought it might be nice to check out this plane that's going to be mine in a few months if we all take care of business, and I think we will. But mostly, actually, I wanted to go and say hello to the journalists who are traveling along with the vice president because I figured they must be lonely because Kamala Harris doesn't take any questions. And I want to just point this out before we let the media ask me some questions, that I think it's really disgraceful, both for Kamala Harris, but also for a lot of the American media that participates in this stuff, to have a person who has been the presumptive nominee of the Democrat Party for 17 days and refuses to take a single question from the American media. Now, it's well known, of course, that President Trump and I will go anywhere, we'll answer any question because we respect the American people enough to actually ask them for their vote rather than sit in front of a teleprompter, read scripted lines, and run away from every reporter and every actual citizen who's going to decide this election. I think it's a scandal, and I think the vice president should be ashamed of herself. So hopefully our reporters out there in the audience will start doing their job a little bit and going and demanding that Kamala Harris actually answer to the American people. And what should she answer for? And I think it's an important thing to point out here before I kick it over to you guys for some questions. Well, one thing she should answer for, we're in a great American manufacturing facility here, and I appreciate y'all showing up and standing behind me. But one thing we know is that you cannot manufacture in this country unless you have access to low-cost power. And we happen to be sitting on the Saudi Arabia of natural gas in this country. We happen to have unlimited oil and gas resources right here in the United States of America, and yet Kamala Harris would rather get energy from tin-pot dictators in Iran and Russia than from American citizens and American workers. And not only is that driving up the cost of power for hardworking American families, it's also making it harder and harder to manufacture right here in the United States of America. And I'm one of these guys who believes that it's important that we make more things right here in the USA. We ought to make more of our own pharmaceuticals. We ought to make more of our own manufactured goods. We ought to make more of our own food. We have to be self-sufficient as a people. And if we're not self-sufficient, then it's going to allow the communist Chinese to run all over us. And that's exactly what they've been doing under the Harris administration. The other thing that Kamala Harris ought to answer for is this terrible crisis at the American southern border. She has been the border czar for 3.5 years, and Americans have suffered because of it. I know this community's been affected by it. I know I've seen the consequences of it personally, but the fentanyl that the Mexican drug cartels are bringing into our country, it is killing Americans by the bushels, and it is unnecessary. It is happening because of failed public policy. I talked to somebody just yesterday, actually, two kids, a 19-year-old boy and a 15-year-old girl. And their mom and dad had died of a fentanyl overdose just 5 years prior when they were 10 and 14 years old. These two kids were orphaned. And they're incredible kids. And I told them I was rooting for them. And I can't believe that our leadership has let what has happened to these children happen. It's not necessary. There's no American that wants the Mexican drug cartels to take advantage of our country and make billions of dollars selling drugs into our communities, and these kids suffered because of it. You have a little girl who's bounced around 4 foster homes in just the past 4 years because of the poison that took her parents from her. And you ask yourselves, why are we doing this? Why are we letting this stuff come into our country? I know very personally the pain of addiction. Some of you saw my RNC remarks, but my mom struggled with addiction for pretty much my entire life. And she's been clean and sober for nearly 10 years now, and that's an incredible blessing for my family, an incredible blessing for my kids to be able to get to know their grandmother. But I really believe that if the poison that Kamala Harris is letting come across the border in 2024 was coming across the border 15 years ago or 12 years ago, I would have never got that second chance with my mom. And we would have never had the opportunity to see her build a wonderful relationship with her 3 grandchildren. And if this campaign of Donald Trump's and mine is about anything, it's about preserving the American dream, and the American dream is sometimes a thing of second chances. We want moms and dads to recover from addiction and get another chance with their kids. We want kids who come from a poor family to be able to stand here and run for vice president of the United States because it's the greatest country in the world, and we are proud of it, and it provides incredible bounty and incredible opportunity to our people. We want kids who grew up in low-income families to be able to walk outside and walk down the street without being afraid of a violent crime, because violent crime has skyrocketed under the Harris administration. We want police officers to be able to do their job and maybe receive a thank you from their federal government, and not a federal government that makes their job more and more difficult. And in all these areas, we have a country that's going in the wrong direction thanks to Kamala Harris. And I think that it's important to say we could be doing so much better. And not just that we could be doing so much better, we were doing so much better when Donald J. Trump was president of the United States. We had somebody who was fighting for American manufacturing, American workers, and fighting for their jobs. We had somebody who was empowering our police and making it easier for them to do their jobs. We had somebody who was stopping the flow of fentanyl and stopping the Mexican drug cartels from taking advantage of our country. And we had somebody who was pursuing the kind of economic policies where you could build a life in your home without having groceries become unaffordable, without having housing become unaffordable. The most consistent complaint that I hear from people all across the country, and I've been to more than a dozen states, I think, since Donald Trump tapped me, the most consistent complaint that I hear is that it is harder and harder for normal people to get by. And I happen to think that if you work hard and play by the rules in this country, you ought to be entitled to a good life in the country that your grandparents built. It's a very simple goal, and it's something that we can get for everybody. Now, is that possible? Thanks to Kamala Harris, grocery prices are up 30% since she took office. Gas prices are up 50% since she took office. Rent is over 40% since she took office. Every single thing that Americans need to buy in order to live a halfway decent life has become more expensive because of Kamala Harris's economic policies. And instead of saying, I'm sorry, instead of saying, maybe, we should go in a different direction, she's running from the media, refusing to answer tough questions, and hoping that a basement campaign is going to earn her a promotion. And I think we ought to say to Kamala Harris, you are fired. Your policies didn't work, your agenda doesn't work, and it's not what the American people want. So let me just recap it here, and then I will turn it over to the media. On day one, Kamala Harris suspended deportations. On day one, Kamala Harris stopped deportations for the American people. On day one, Kamala Harris refused to continue construction of the Trump border wall. On day one, Kamala Harris basically refused to push back against the drug cartels in this country. And on day one, Kamala Harris said that she was going to decriminalize illegal aliens, and she did all of those things. Now, the American people have suffered the consequences because of it. On day one, Kamala Harris became the border czar, and ever since then, we've had a wide open southern border. Now, it's not just what she's done on day one, it's what she's done ever since then. She cast the deciding vote for the so-called Inflation Reduction Act that sent a lot of our resources to China and sent interest rates through the roof. She cast the deciding vote for the very policies that made groceries and gas and housing less affordable for American citizens. And I think it's very simple. I think that we can do better. I know that we can do better. We were doing better when Donald J. Trump was president. So thank you all for being here. Thanks for standing in support of our president. And to all the American people out there who are listening to these remarks or will hear them on TV just a little bit later, my very simple request is to think about people who are suffering in this country. Think about kids who lost a parent to an opioid overdose. Think about families like mine who can't afford groceries when they go up by 30%. Think about families that are struggling because the mom and the dad can't get a good job because Kamala Harris would rather build the Chinese middle class than the American middle class. Those people could be doing so much better, and they will, so long as Donald Trump becomes president. My final comment I'll say is, it says on our national currency, "In God we trust." That is the motto of the United States of America. I believe that God calls us to hope and not to despair. And I really do hope for this country and believe that this country's best days are ahead of it. But the most important thing that we can do to give people all across this country hope is to get them a government that actually works for American citizens, and that's by electing Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. Thank you all, and God bless you. Appreciate it. And what I'd like to do here, what I'd like to do is start with the local reporters, and then if we have questions from national reporters afterwards, then I'll call on you too. So if you're a local news outlet, if you throw your hand in the air, and I'll try to call on you. Sir, right there.
Hi, Daniel Gomez, WEAU 13 News here in Eau Claire. So, we just talked about the border and everything, and talked about addiction. You know, here in Eau Claire, earlier, like 5 months ago, we lost 2 hospitals, including an addiction resource center.
Great question.
As well. And as you know, Eau Claire County voted blue in the 2020 election, voting for Biden. So what can you tell Wisconsinites here in Eau Claire County in western Wisconsin who are battling addiction, who are battling these sort of things with such limited resources? What can you tell them to help us, you know, see your way and see that you guys are the rightful choice here, you know, even just without even mentioning the border, because we're far away from the Mexican border, but you know, what can you do for Wisconsinites up here in the upper Northwest?
So we are far away from the Mexican border, of course, but we're not far away from the fentanyl that Mexican drug cartels bring into communities like Eau Claire. And that's why I talk about it. Every state is now a border state because every state is affected by the problems. But particularly on this question about hospitals and how do we actually reinvigorate hospitals in some of our small towns and more rural areas in our country, I think there are 2 answers to this question. One goes directly to the immigration problem and one doesn't. Look, first of all, we need to actually invest in our hospital system. We've seen since Obamacare was passed, we've seen a lot of rural hospitals, hospitals in small towns close down. You cannot have a good healthcare system. You're never going to help people beat addiction if they've got to drive 90 minutes to the closest hospital. So we've got to preserve the rural healthcare infrastructure that exists in this country. And this is where the illegal immigration issue bears on it directly, because we know that Kamala Harris wants to give health care benefits, sometimes Medicaid, sometimes Medicare to illegal aliens. We also know that when illegal aliens come in, they have to be housed in the jails sometimes, or they have to be housed somewhere else if they're not committing crimes. That costs local taxpayer money. We know they have to be fed. That costs local taxpayer monies. We know that they have to be provided shelter, right? That costs money. And you combine all those things, those are tax dollars that are not going to build out our rural hospital infrastructure and support our hospitals. They're going to people who shouldn't be here. Maybe they're good people, but they shouldn't be here, and we've got to put the interests of our citizens first. That starts with prioritizing things like hospitals, medical services, food and shelter, that stuff. I want us to be a generous country. And I know Donald Trump wants us to be a generous country, but that generosity starts with investing in American citizens and people who have the right to be here. Sir.
Marquette University that came out earlier today. It shows a virtual tie between former President Trump and Vice President Harris. There's an old saying in politics that what can swing undecided voters in a place like Wisconsin is whether you seem like somebody they would like to have a beer with.
Yeah.
Why would people in Wisconsin want to have a beer with you?
Well, I guess they'd want to have a beer with me because I actually do like to drink beer, and I probably like to drink beer a little bit too much, but that's okay. I'm sure the media won't give me too much crap over that. But look, I mean, the reason I'm doing this, and the reason I think Donald Trump is doing this, and I think the media often slanders him, but I've never met a guy who likes normal people more than Donald Trump. I've never met a guy who, when he's got a big decision to make, he will solicit feedback from every single person all over the country. It's funny, when he was actually thinking about who was going to be his vice presidential running mate, I met with him actually the morning of the attempted assassination. It was Saturday morning. And he said, you know, JD, everybody's asking me what I am going to do for VP, and I'm asking everybody. He said, in fact, this morning, I talked to the gardener at Mar-a-Lago. And I said, well, sir, what did the Mar-a-Lago gardener say, right? This bears directly on my life. I'm very curious here. And look, I'm very much the same way. I mean, I like the people of this country. I like people who work hard and play by the rules. I like people who just want to take their kids to a ball game or invest in their community or spend a little time watching TV and making the things that actually make this country work. They do it, and they do it right here in this factory, and the people behind me do it every single day. And I think that to lead this country, you should feel some gratitude for it, and you should feel some admiration for the people who actually make the country run. And I will say sometimes I hear Kamala Harris, and she talks about the history of this country, and she likes to put it down a little bit. I don't know that she actually admires the people who work in this factory. I hope that she does, but I don't really see that gratitude. I don't really hear that gratitude when she speaks. I certainly do. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I'd make a good vice president, is because I actually care about the people standing behind me, and I think they feel like I care for them, and I think they care for me too. Are we, remember, local, start local, ma'am, in the red?
Governor
Thank you.
Walz has said that he cannot wait to debate you. Your reaction to that, and is there one issue that you would really like to debate him on?
Minneapolis here. We're trying to focus on Wisconsin, but I'm sure your reach, I guess, spreads across the border. So we'll answer the question. Look, I think I want to debate Governor Walz because nothing to do with Governor Walz, but because the American people deserve to see the people who want to be their vice president stand before them and try to persuade them. And it's one of the things that's really frustrated me about Kamala's campaign is that she seems totally uninterested in actually talking to American voters and persuading them. If there's a single issue around which I think Governor Walz has to answer when it comes to his record, this is a guy who says that he stands for public safety, but actively encouraged the rioters who burned down Minneapolis. And I think that if you want to say you stand for public safety, you cannot look the American people in the eye and say, well, I welcome the people who caused $13 billion of damage to Minneapolis because I encouraged them to burn my city to the ground rather than exercise some basic self-control and rather encourage law enforcement to do what they can do and keep us all safe. I'm scandalized by this guy pretending that he stands for working people. Working people need to live in communities with public safety. Working people need to be able to build a business and know that some hoodlum isn't going to come along and burn it to the ground because of a political issue. Working people need the police to be supported in their communities, and Governor Walz has been a total failure on all those things.
I am local.
Great, thank you.
Do you believe elections in Wisconsin are conducted fairly and securely? Obviously, your running mate had some issues with that in the last election.
Well, one of the things that Wisconsin did very poorly in the 2020 election is that it actually allowed a lot of big tech billionaires to spend a lot of money, I think, putting influence on local boards of election. And as I understand it, Wisconsin has actually stopped that, and kudos to Wisconsin for stopping that, because that's ridiculous. You cannot have private billionaires who own social media companies buying up public boards of elections, influencing public boards of elections. And again, as I understand it, that stopped. So I see a lot of reason to be optimistic about the election in Wisconsin. Of course, President Trump and I want there to be a free and fair election because we want every legal vote to count. That's the hallmark of America's constitutional republic, is that everybody's vote has to count. But for everybody's vote to count, everything has to be safe and secure. I feel a lot of confidence about Wisconsin, but certainly as a campaign, we're going to continue to monitor things. We're going to continue to make sure that people are doing things the right way. And I think the voters of Wisconsin should have some confidence that the Trump campaign is on top of this stuff and focused on this stuff. And we think we're going to have a great election in Wisconsin, and I think we're going to win. Sir.
WKOW Eau Claire. As you know, Kamala Harris is also speaking in Eau Claire right now with her new running mate, Tim Walz. Why did you choose to speak here in Eau Claire today, the same time as Harris?
Well, we wanted to make sure there was a contrast, in part because the media has been so dishonest about Kamala Harris's record, and in part because they refused to ask her questions. We wanted to make sure that there was at least somebody out there providing an alternative story. We have to remember, President Trump delivered a closed border and rising wages. What has Kamala Harris delivered? A promise to defund the police, a promise to ban fracking and offshore drilling, a promise to destroy the American energy sector, a promise to increase the prices of the goods that the American people rely on. She has not been a good vice president for the American people, and I don't think she deserves a promotion. I think she deserves to be fired, and that's what we're here talking to people about, because the media needs to tell the other side of the story. And unfortunately, I think unless you have somebody here, they're not going to do that. Ma'am?
We've heard a lot from Democrats using the word weird, calling you weird, calling former President Trump weird. What do you make of that weird argument?
I think that the weird argument honestly came from a bunch of 24-year-old social media interns who were bullied in school, and they decided they're going to project that onto the entire Trump campaign. And the reason it doesn't make sense is because you ask who's weird, right? I think it's pretty weird to be the border czar and to open up the border and allow fentanyl to come into your community. I think it's pretty weird to try to take children away from their parents if the parents don't want to consent to sex changes. That's something that Tim Walz did. I think it's pretty weird to want to defund the police. I think it's pretty weird to pretend that you're a tough-on-crime prosecutor, even though you pursued the policies that made San Francisco such a disaster when it comes to crime and public safety. So if they want to call me weird, look, I've got my wife here. I've got 3 beautiful kids at home. I'm a normal guy who wants to live the American dream and wants all of you and your kids to be able to live the American dream. That's why I'm in it. If those people want to call me weird, I think it's a badge of honor.
with Wisconsin Public Radio. Farmers in Wisconsin and other agricultural states are increasingly relying on foreign guest workers for seasonal labor. How does your immigration policy accommodate or address that need?
Well, look, I think that the reason why we have an economy that is more and more reliant on guest workers, and frankly not just guest workers, but also a lot of illegal labor, is because the Harris administration has invited in 20 million people to be here illegally. When I talk to farmers, they don't want to hire illegal aliens. They would actually like to hire American workers and people who are lawful residents, but you cannot have a system that works for American farmers when you have 20 million people coming in here illegally. And by the way, a lot of them are competing with Wisconsin workers and Wisconsin people for jobs, driving down wages, making it harder for Wisconsinites to live the American dream. That is a scandal, and that is a disgrace. The thing I really believe about our farmers is they need access to big markets. They want to export food all over the world, and that's the way to build food security for the American people, is to allow our farmers to export all over the world. For the first time, basically in the history of this country, we are now a net importer of food. That means we no longer have the food security that America had for over 200 years. I'd like Wisconsin farmers and American farmers to get back to being the bulwark of the entire world food supply, because it means America's food supply is safe, and that's what the Kamala Harris administration has destroyed. Ma'am.
Hi, Kelly Mylan, Spectrum News. Mr. Vance, recently you, after being picked for VP, you said my attitude is it doesn't really matter as much as this hits my ego, and then Trump recently said it makes no difference. Do you think it matters that Harris chose Walz, and why?
I think it matters about what it says about her, right? And I think that when President Trump selected me, what he was saying is, I want somebody who's going to fight for workers. I want somebody who's going to push back against the Chinese efforts to build the American middle class on the tops of the, he's going to push back against the Chinese effort to build the Chinese middle class on the back of the American middle class. And I want somebody who's going to push back against this crazy border policy of Kamala Harris. What does Kamala Harris's selection of Tim Walz say about her? Well, I think it says, one, she's leaning into the defund the police radicalism of the last few years. Two, she's leaning into the open borders policies of the last few years. This is a guy, Tim Walz, who wanted to give driver's licenses to illegal aliens, facilitating the flow of illegal immigration instead of stopping it. And then the final point that I'd say is it says that she bent the knee to the Hamas caucus of the Democrat Party. Whatever your views on Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, and obviously he's not in my political party, he's criticized me, I criticized him. The amount of rage that you heard from the far left saying Kamala Harris can't pick this guy because he's Jewish is disgraceful. I want my kids to grow up in a country where they can be whatever they want to be, and people aren't attacking them for their ethnic heritage, and that's somehow considered acceptable. It's not just that they said it was acceptable. It's not just what these people said about Shapiro. It's the way that the Harris administration and the Harris campaign refused to push back against it. I think it's a real scandal. Yeah.
Trump has denounced Project 2025 in its entirety. Is that something that you completely agree with, that Project 2025 and the policy proposals, with everything,
Sure.
every part of it, do you disagree with all of it?
Well, I think what President Trump said is that Project 2025 does not represent the agenda of the Trump campaign, and it doesn't. Donald Trump represents the agenda of the Trump campaign. He's a very smart guy. He already had a lot of good public policies. He speaks for himself. And I think what's made the president so mad about the conversation around Project 2025 is anybody saying that an outside group, my understanding is it's a bunch of white papers. It's almost 1,000 pages long. No one speaks for Donald Trump. Not 1,000 pages of white papers, not a conservative nonprofit, not anybody except for the Trump campaign and Donald Trump. Sir?
Yeah, Matt, Leader Telegram based out of Eau Claire. Kind of speaking a little bit more on Project 2025. Wisconsin Democrats worry that Project 2025 will have negative impacts in rural communities like here in Eau Claire. With them stating that the Project 2025 has plans to cut federal loan programs for small farmers. How do you combat this claim?
Well, look, I combat the claim by repeating what I just said, which is that Project 2025 is not Donald Trump's agenda. Donald Trump's agenda is his agenda, and he speaks for himself. And the Trump agenda from 2017 to 2021 was awfully good for farmers in Wisconsin and everywhere else. This was a guy who fought for Wisconsin farmers to have access to global markets. This is a guy who was willing to fight back against some of the trade practices of other countries that were bad for Wisconsin farmers. This is a guy, Donald Trump, who supported an American energy policy that made it possible for farmers to get the fuel and the fertilizer they needed. His agenda was great for American farmers, and again, he speaks for himself. We're going to do the same thing when we get reelected. We're going to make American farmers wealthy and prosperous again, and we're going to do it by Donald Trump doing exactly what Donald Trump wants to do, not any organization that pretends to speak for him but doesn't.
Senator Vance.
Yeah.
2 quick questions for you. Circling back on the debate, we know
Sure.
that Kamala Harris, when she was VP, agreed to a debate early August, the 13th, with CBS. That was before Biden dropped out. Now he's out. We have a new VP pick. Can you give us any guidance on when and where that debate would happen? And then secondly, the weird thing keeps coming up. I know you said that was interns. The first time we heard it on cable news was with Waltz. He took that insult all the way to the Democrat ticket, clearly convincing Democrats of these claims. What are you going to do to combat the independent voters and prevent them from saying that you're weird?
Yeah, so August 13th, what is the date today? August
7th.
7th? Okay, so here's my offer to Kamala Harris. If she'd like to do a debate with me on August 13th, I'll do it, right? We should do that, right? I don't think she wants to anymore because, one, she probably doesn't even know that she's going to be the Democratic nominee, and two, we don't know who the vice presidential nominee is going to be either. He's got a lot of skeletons that are coming out of the closet today, and we'll see if the Democrats pull a bait and switch on Tim Walz or on Kamala Harris, just like they did with Joe Biden. But look, if Kamala Harris wants to honor her commitment and debate on August 13th, let's do it. I'm all game. Now, the second thing I'll say is, look, what Democrats use to attack Republicans, they're going to attack us on something. They're going to criticize us on something. I think that what makes Donald Trump and I good candidates and a good team is that we're normal guys who want to make this country great again. And we want Americans to be able to live the American dream. I really do think that whatever Tim Walz calls me, I mean, talk about weird with Tim Walz. I don't know if you guys saw the rally yesterday, but afterwards, his wife comes up to him, and Tim Walz does what any normal Midwestern guy would do, seeing his beautiful wife on stage after his speech. He gives her a firm handshake. Right? That's pretty weird. That's pretty weird. When I see my wife after a speech, I give her a hug and a kiss because I'm excited to see her, and she's my wife. These people have no leg to stand on, and I think what's going to happen is they're going to try to call us weird for the next 93 days, and what's going to happen is the American people aren't going to care about it because they don't care about some tagline written by a social media intern. They care about which president and which vice president is going to make their country better and their lives more safe and more secure. That's Donald Trump and I, and I'm proud to carry that message forward for the next 93 days. Ma'am.
Can you please paint a picture of the future? Grievances aside, what is your winning message?
Oh, I think it's a great future. I mean, our picture for the future, President Trump and I's vision for the future is that if you work hard and play by the rules, whether you went to college, whether you went to law school, or whether you just graduated from high school, you can go and work in a job that's proud, that's meaningful, that pays you a good wage, and allows you to start a family. It's about housing prices that are low enough that whatever your background, again, so long as you're working hard, you're able to buy a nice home to raise your family in. It's about going to the grocery store and being able to afford a nice steak and not having to cut back because Kamala Harris has driven the price of groceries through the roof. And it's about whether you're poor or rich or in the middle, being able to send your kids off to the playground without being worried that they're going to be harmed or they're going to come across a drug that's going to take their life. I think it's a basic and very simple vision of the American dream that you work hard and you play by the rules, you get a good home, you get a nice house, you get a secure family, and you get a good job, and that's all we really want. It's crazy to say, a lot of Americans feel like that's slipping away. And it's a very, very heartbreaking thing. I know certainly in the hometown that I grew up in, a lot of Americans felt like that was slipping away because, look, we pursued policies that destroyed thousands of good manufacturing jobs. That's just in my hometown. Millions of good manufacturing jobs all across our country. The Kamala Harris economy is that you have to go to the college she says you have to go to and incur hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt to be able to support a family in this country. I think that's a disgrace, and President Trump and I want something better for the American people. Any more locals? You already asked one, ma'am. Ma'am. Oh, it's okay. Any more locals? Sir in the back?
I'm from the Lacrosse Tribune, Chippewa Herald, and on the topic of manufacturing,
yeah.
The Biden administration has kind of come after Trump for the Foxconn project here, not fully delivering. So I wonder if you have any comment on that, or how you guys plan to deliver manufacturing for Wisconsinites?
Well, look, I think it's quite simple, and obviously not every facility is going to work out perfectly, but if you look at the Trump manufacturing agenda, you saw manufacturing coming back to this country in a very, very big way, and it's a long-term project. You're not going to solve every problem overnight, but what you have to do is, number one, you have to be able to put tariffs or be willing to put tariffs on Chinese goods. They're trying to undercut American wages with slave labor and bring in a lot of cheap products. We have to be willing to say, if you want access to American markets, you got to treat your employees fairly, and we prefer that people make things with American labor. That's leg number one. Leg number two is you've got to have an energy and a regulatory policy that allows people to make things in this country at a reasonable price. This is the biggest problem with Kamala Harris's policies is energy is too expensive, oil is too expensive, everything is too expensive, which makes it hard to manufacture and build things in the United States of America. The Donald Trump agenda is drill, baby, drill. Get this stuff out of the ground with American workers, get it out of American territory, and drive down the cost of manufacturing so we can make more things in this country and stamp more products made in the USA. I'll do one more question here. Any more locals? Sir, thank you.
What's your relationship with President Trump, and are there any policies that you guys disagree on?
Look, President Trump and I are very good friends, and we spoke twice yesterday, actually. And, you know, what really unites us is a love of this country and a belief that if we had smarter policies, people could live more safe, more secure, and more prosperous lives. And we're extremely united on that. Now, of course, we're not going to agree on every single issue, but I see my role as the vice presidential candidate to offer counsel in private. But fundamentally, as the VP nominee, he won the nomination and I didn't, and my goal is to support his agenda and get him elected next president of the United States, because I believe that if we do, whether I was on this ticket or not, I believe fundamentally that the people I care about, the people who built this country, their lives are going to be better if Donald Trump is our next president, and their lives are going to be worse if Kamala Harris is our next president. That vision unites me and President Trump. And yeah, he's got a great sense of humor, and yeah, we tell a lot of jokes with each other, but fundamentally we're united on taking this country back and making sure people are able to live good lives in this wonderful country that all of us love. And with that, I want to just say a note of gratitude for all you standing back here. I know it's a little it's a little toasty today, and you guys probably don't care about me jabber-jabbing with the media here, but I appreciate you guys being here. And I just say, look, I love what you guys are doing. I love building things and making things in the United States of America. I want it to be easier to build this kind of business, to work in this kind of company, and we're going to pursue policies that make that possible every single day. God bless you guys for what you do, and thank you. See y'all.
I've been farming right here in the Chippewa Valley my entire life. In 1884, my great-grandfather, Dan Danielson, moved to the Chippewa Valley and homesteaded our original farm. My grandfather, William, continued on with the family farm, followed by my father, Wayne. Today, my two brothers and I all farm in the same area in Cadott, just over 20 minutes from here. My extended family still farm the same land my great-grandparents did, and we look forward to farming it for years to come. My wife, Deborah, and I purchased 700 acres of our own land and now grow 500 acres of corn, soybeans, and some hay. We built a grain setup and milk a small herd of cows. My story is a Wisconsin story, one of hard work and perseverance. And that's why I'm glad and excited that Vice President Harris's running mate is a lifelong Midwesterner. Just like me, who will always fight for working families and understands rural America. As a kid from Cadott, I'm very proud to stand on this stage today as we welcome the next president and vice president of the United States to the Chippewa Valley. Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz know that rural America is the backbone of our nation. It's family farms like mine that feed our country, and it's small businesses in towns like Cadott that keep our economy strong. But while Donald Trump was in office, my brothers and I saw firsthand his disastrous trade wars and economic policies, which left many farmers like us struggling and devastated small and mid-sized grain farms. Trump stands on the side of big ag, big oil, and giant corporations. Not family farms, and he made it harder for us to compete. Together with President Biden, Kamala Harris has fought for rural communities, whether through fixing our roads and bridges so we can get products to markets, or fighting to expand affordable health care, or helping family farms like mine. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance just don't care about rural America, no matter how much they pretend to. That's why this November, I'm voting for Kamala Harris and Governor Walz. And now it's my honor to introduce our future Vice President, Governor Tim Walz.
Wow. Wow. Hello, Eau Claire. Isn't it good to have a candidate who can pronounce the name correctly? So, wow. Les, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. More importantly, thank you for articulating what we know it means to live out here in the Midwest. Care for your neighbors. Kindness. I want to acknowledge a few people today. Somebody who I have to tell you might be the kindest human being I have ever met. Your governor, Tony Evers. A dear friend of mine who I had a chance to serve with in the House of Representatives, an incredible senator, Tammy Baldwin. The people's lawyer, your Attorney General, Josh Kaul. And someone who knows education's the foundation of everything, State Superintendent Jill Underly. All the state and local officials are here, but I want to say that point of personal privilege on this, I got a bunch of my family down here in the front, so. A couple of them are Badgers too, by the way, so. And a real special thank you to everybody here. Looking out across here, look, you're busy people. You got things to do. It's a summer day. You had to walk 2 miles. I had nothing to do with that, by the way, nothing. But you came here for one beautiful, simple reason. You love this country and this democracy. I couldn't be prouder to be on this ticket to help make Kamala Harris the next president of the United States. You know it. Vice President Harris is on the side of the American people. She took on predators, fraudsters, transnational gang members. She stood up against powerful corporate interests, and she never hesitated, not once, to reach across the aisle if it improved people's lives. Being a Midwesterner too, I know a little something about commitment to people. I was born in a small town in Nebraska where community meant everything. My mom and dad taught me to show generosity to my neighbors and work for a common good. At 17, I joined the Army National Guard. For 24 years, I proudly wore the uniform of this nation. And that service, just as it did for my dad, a Korean War era veteran, and millions of others, I got the GI Bill and it gave me a shot at a college education. My dad was a teacher. My siblings were all teachers. And 3 of them married teachers. It's noble work. I had the privilege of teaching public school, social studies, and coaching football for 20 years. And for all you Packer and Badgers fans, yeah, we did win a state championship. So it's what we do. But it was my students who encouraged me to run for office. I never thought that much about it, but they saw in me what I was hoping to instill in them. This idea of a commitment to a better world, a common good, a belief that one single person can actually make a difference. I lived in a red district, but my neighbors were kind enough and graced me with the opportunity to go to the United States House of Representatives for 12 years to represent them. I learned how to compromise without compromising my values. And as governor of the great state of Minnesota, I brought all that experience. Okay. Are there Minnesotans in the house today? Bringing that experience to tackling the challenges that we're facing our state. We don't shy away from challenges, but I'll tell you what, Donald Trump, he sees the world differently than we see it. He has no understanding of service because he's too busy servicing himself. Again and again and again. Again and again and again. This guy weakens our country to strengthen his own hands. He mocks our laws. He sows chaos and division amongst the people. And that's to say nothing of the job he did as president. He froze in the face of COVID, and it cost people's lives. He drove the economy into the ground. And make no mistake about it, violent crime was up when Donald Trump was president. Those of you who are a little older know this. Older Republicans used to talk about freedom. These guys today, it turns out that freedom to them means government should be free to invade your exam room with your doctor. Now look, we're pretty neighborly with Wisconsin. We get our friendly battles, but in Minnesota, just like in Wisconsin, we respect our neighbors and the personal choices they make. Even if we wouldn't make the same choices for ourselves, because we know there's a golden rule. Mind your own damn business. Mind your own damn business. I don't need you telling me about our health care. I don't need you telling us who we love. And I sure the hell don't need you telling us what books we're going to read. And there's a very personal one for me, and that includes IVF. Some of you might have heard this. This is very personal for my wife and I. When Gwen and I decided to have children, we went through years of fertility treatments. And I remember each night praying that the call was going to come and it was going to be good news. The phone would ring, tenseness in my stomach, and then the agony when you heard the treatments hadn't worked. So it wasn't by chance that when we welcomed our first child, our beautiful daughter, we named her Hope. When Vice President Harris and I and everyone here talks about freedom, we mean the freedom to make your own healthcare decisions. And for all of our little ones to be free to go to school without worrying about being shot dead in their classroom. And just like Wisconsin, over in Minnesota, we believe in the Second Amendment, but we also believe in common sense gun violence laws. And just so you know, when I was in Congress, I was the top gun at the trap shoot 3 years in a row. I can outshoot them, too. I can outshoot these guys. Look, freedom is when... Freedom... Oh! Can we get somebody to help? Somebody's hot. Somebody's hot. Can we get somebody to help? You okay? Drink some water, folks. It is hot out. Get somebody else. Thank you. You get water? They're so weird. They're so weird. You okay? Yeah. Thank you all for helping. Grateful. Thank you. Thank you all. Take care of one another on this. This is why we gather. Look, it's hot. It is hot. I'll come again. They've got folks here. We'll make sure we're okay. But I have to tell you all again, in all seriousness, to come and gather like this, to talk about our freedoms, the ability to talk about what could be good. And I have to say, this idea of caring for our neighbor and kindness and a hand up when somebody needs it, or just the sense of that people go through things and to be able to be there when they need it, that's who we are. It's not about mocking. It's not name callings. And you see it amongst them. Yay. Thank you all. They do. Thank you all. We're okay. We have someone down. They're treating him. They're getting him some water, and it's good. He's going to get up. You guys need some water, too? We'll ask him. Teddy, can you see if they have some more water? That'd be great. Take care of your neighbors. There we go. There we go. All right. All right, folks. Hey, they're getting him taken care of. We'll stay. I don't want to be too lighthearted. I thought about doing the Minnesota Rouser, but I thought that might be too much over here on you. Look, we'll get them taken care of. You know what this is about. This is about when they talk about the freedoms that we heard. And freedom in education means that our teachers aren't saddled with crippling debt when they go into this. It's student loan debt. And I'll tell you what a big part of this is. We settle our political differences not through violence, but through our votes. The question is pretty simple. This election is all about asking that question. Which direction will this country go in? Donald Trump knows the direction he wants to take us. He wants to take it back. He wants to do the things that you saw, but be very clear. Don't believe him when he plays dumb. He knows exactly what he's talking about. He knows exactly what Project 2025 will do in restricting and taking our freedoms. He knows that it rigs the economy for the super rich. If he gets a chance to go back to the White House, it will be far worse than it was 4 years ago. Raising costs for the middle class, repealing the Affordable Care Act, gutting Social Security and Medicare, the very safety nets that protect people when they're down. And of course, banning abortions across this country with or without Congress. This is where we talk to our neighbors. Donald Trump is not for you or your family. And Trump's running mate shares those same dangerous and backward beliefs. You know, just like all of us in regular America, we go to Yale, and then we have our careers funded by Silicon Valley billionaires, and then you write a book about the place you grew up and you trash that place. Come on, that's not who Wisconsin is. That's not who Minnesota is. We're better than that. We're better than that. One of the best parts of this job is going to be, I can't wait till the debate. Look, I've done this enough, and I know bullies, and I'm not a name caller, but what I am as a teacher, I observe things. So I want to tell you, what I observed, and you've observed about these guys when you see them, that it's a very clear thing. Yes, they are creepy and weird as hell. You see it. You see it. This is not normal. This is not normal behavior. Nobody's asking for this crazy stuff. So I'll tell you what. You heard it from the vice president. You've heard her talk about this. We're sure the hell not going back. We're not going back. We are not going back. We are not going back. We damn sure aren't, but it's even more than that. This is a campaign about where we're going, and that's a future where everyone matters and everyone's included. Kamala Harris, she believes in the freedom to make your own choices. She believes in opportunity for every single person to join the middle class. And she believes in the promise of America. Thank you, Madam Vice President, for the trust that you've placed in me. Wisconsin, please help me in giving a warm Midwest welcome to the next President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Keep on running. good to be back. Good afternoon, everybody. Can we hear it for Tim Walz? Oh, I'm so happy to be running with him, let me tell you. So let me start by thanking Les, your words, your leadership, your voice. It's so important. Les, thank you for everything you are and everything you do for our country. And it is good to be with so many incredible leaders, including the most magnificent, wonderful Governor Tony Evers. Every time I come to Wisconsin, Tony meets me on the tarmac. He's such an incredible human being. I want to thank Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski, Chair of the Wisconsin Democratic Party, Ben Wickler, and my dear, dear friend, Senator Tammy Baldwin. I served with Tammy when I was in the United States Senate, and I'm going to tell you, she was always, always, always fighting for the people of this state. And in November, we are going to re-elect her to the United States Senate. And please give it up one more time for Wisconsin's own Bon Iver. It's a good afternoon. It's a good afternoon. And let me say, I also want to bring greetings from our incredible President, Joe Biden. He loves Wisconsin. He loves Wisconsin. And I know we are all deeply grateful for his lifetime of service to our nation and for all he continues to do. That's right. That's right. I'm going to tell him what you said. So, Wisconsin, this has been a big week. On Monday, I officially became the Democratic nominee for President of the United States. And yesterday, I announced my running mate in this campaign, Governor Tim Walz. And as you just heard, and the Minnesotans here know, Tim has an incredible record as governor of the great state of Minnesota. And to those who know him best, Tim is more than a governor. To his wife, Gwen, he is a husband. To his kids, Hope and Gus, he is dad. To his fellow veterans, he is Sergeant Major Walz. To the people of southern Minnesota, for 12 years, he was a congressman. To his former high school students, he was Mr. Walz. And to his former high school football players, he was Coach. Coach. And in 90 days, the nation will know Coach Walz by a new title, Vice President of the United States of America. That's right. Oh, it really is good to be back in Wisconsin. So listen, let me tell you, I am clear. The path to the White House runs right through this state. And with your help, we will win in November. We are going to win. We are going to win. And I've been here many times, as you all know, recently and even before. And many of you know then, before I was elected vice president, before I was elected United States Senator, I was an elected Attorney General, and before that, an elected District Attorney. And before that, I was a courtroom prosecutor. So in those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, scammers who broke the rules for personal gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. I know his type. In fact, I've been dealing with people like him my whole career. For example, as Attorney General of California, well, hold on, you know what? The courts are going to handle that part of it. What we're going to do is beat them in November. So I'll tell you, as Attorney General, I took on one of our country's largest for-profit colleges that scammed students. Well, Donald Trump ran a for-profit college that scammed students. As a prosecutor, I specialized in cases of sexual abuse. Well, Donald Trump was found liable for committing sexual abuse. As Attorney General, I held the big Wall Street banks accountable for fraud. Well, Donald Trump was just found guilty of fraud. 34 counts. So in this campaign, I'll tell you, I will proudly put my record against his any day of the week. Any day of the week. But let's make no mistake, this campaign is not just about us versus Donald Trump. It's about two very different visions for our nation. Two very different visions. One, for us, focused on the future. The other, focused on the past. And Wisconsin, we fight for the future. We fight for a future where every worker has the freedom to join a union. Union strong. Union strong. Union strong. Union strong. Union strong. We fight for a future where every senior can retire with dignity. A future where we build a broad-based economy and one where every American has the opportunity to own a home, to start a business, to build wealth. And understand, in this fight, as Tim Walz likes to point out, we are joyful warriors. Joyful warriors. Because we know that while fighting for a brighter future may be hard work is good work. Hard work is good work. And so we will continue to fight for affordable housing, for affordable health care, affordable child care, and paid leave. We believe in a future where we lower the cost of living for America's families so that they have a chance not just to get by, but to get ahead. Because while our economy is doing well by many measures, prices for everyday things like groceries are still too high. You know it and I know it. You know, when I was Attorney General, I went after price-fixing schemes And when I am president, it will be a day one priority to fight to bring down prices. I will take on big corporations that engage in illegal price gouging. I will take on corporate landlords that unfairly raise rents on working families. I will take on big pharma and cap the cost of prescription drugs for all Americans. And continue to bring manufacturing jobs back to America and back to communities like Eau Claire. So all this is to say, strengthening our economy and building up the middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency. Because you see, Coach Walz and I know when America's middle class is strong, America is strong. And as we work to move our nation forward, Donald Trump intends to take our nation backward. There is so much evidence of that point. There really is. But look at most recently, Project 2025 in that agenda. Project 2025, you know, if you have some time to take a look at it, I'm telling you, it is a plan to weaken the middle class. It is a plan to weaken the middle class. If he is elected, Donald Trump intends to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations. He intends to cut Social Security and Medicare. He intends to surrender our fight against the climate crisis, and he intends to end the Affordable Care Act. And because we all remember what it was like before the Affordable Care Act, we understand what that means. That's about taking us back to a time when insurance companies had the power to deny people with pre-existing conditions. You remember that? What that was like when we're not going back. We are not going back. We are not going back. But in order to know where we need to go, let's remember the past and what that was like, because we cannot forget. On that point about the ACA, remember? People with pre-existing conditions being denied, children with asthma, breast cancer survivors, grandparents with diabetes. That was no joke. And we cannot go back. Ours has to be a fight for the future and a fight for freedom. A fight for freedom. Across our nation, we have been witnessing a full-on assault against hard-fought, hard-won freedoms and rights. The freedom to vote, the freedom to be safe from gun violence, the freedom to breathe clean air and drink clean water, the freedom to love who you love openly and with pride. And the freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government telling her what to do. And let's remember the traditions of our great country. Generations of Americans before us led in the fight for freedom. And now then, as they would expect, the baton is in our hands. The baton is in our hands, each and every one of us. So we then, who believe in the sacred freedom to vote, will finally pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. We, who believe in the freedom to live safe from gun violence, will finally pass universal background checks, red flag laws, and an assault weapons ban. We, who believe in reproductive freedom, will fight for a woman's right to choose. And we remember that when he was president, Donald Trump handpicked 3 members of the United States Supreme Court, the court of Thurgood and RBG, because he intended for them to overturn Roe v. Wade. And as he intended, they did. And now more than 20 states in our country have a Trump abortion ban, many with no exceptions even for rape and incest. And if he wins, we all know he will sign a national abortion ban to outlaw abortion in every state, even in Wisconsin. But we are not going to let that happen because we trust women. And when I am President of the United States and when Congress passes a bill to restore the protections of Roe v. Wade, I will sign it into law. Thank you all. So listen, everyone took time out of your busy lives and days and all your obligations to come out here and to be together as one community. And I know you did it also because we all know, listen, so much is on the line in this election. It can't be said seriously enough. So much is on the line. And compounded with everything else that we knew was on the line, think about the fact that last month, the United States Supreme Court basically told the former president, who has been convicted of fraud, that going forward he will be immune no matter what he does in the White House. Think about what that means and the changed circumstances since 16/6/20 when you think about what that court decision means. Donald Trump has openly vowed if reelected he will be a dictator on day one. That he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. That he would round up peaceful protesters and throw them out of our country. And even, quote, terminate the United States Constitution. So let us be clear. Let us be clear. Someone who suggests we should terminate the Constitution of the United States should never again have a chance to stand behind the seal of the President of the United States. So basically, I think it all comes down to this. We're all here because we love our country. We love our country. We love our country. And I do believe it is the highest form of patriotism to fight for the ideals of our country. And that's how we preserve the promise of America. Because after all, the promise of America is what makes it possible, by the way, for Governor Walz and me to stand on this stage today. Just think about it. 2 middle-class kids, one a daughter of Oakland, California, who was raised by a working mother and had a summer job at McDonald's. The other, a son of the Nebraska Plains who grew up working on a farm. Think about that. Only in America is it possible for them together to make it all the way together to the White House. Only in America. Only in America. So this is a fight to make real the promise of America for every person in our nation. And also, I'll tell you, and I promise you, our campaign's going to reach out to everyone, from red states, from blue states, from the heartland to the coast. We are running a campaign on behalf of all Americans. And when elected, we will govern on behalf of all Americans. Because Coach Walz and I know, and we're clear about this, unlike the other side, we work for you. We work for you, the American people, and we will always fight for you, for your family, for your freedoms, and for your future. So Wisconsin, ultimately, this election is about a question that we each face. We each face a question in this election, and that is, what kind of country do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a country of freedom, of compassion, of rule of law, or a country of chaos, fear, and hate? And the beauty of our democracy is we each have the power individually and collectively. We each have the power in a democracy to answer that question. The power is with the people. The power is with the people. So in the next 90 days, we need you to use your power. We need you to knock on doors. We need you to register folks to vote. We need you to energize and organize and mobilize and make your voices heard. And I'll tell you, about an hour ago, after I landed on Air Force Two, I met a collection of young leaders from Girl Scout Troop 3307. Oh, they were spectacular. Oh, they were spectacular. None of them taller than 3 feet. They were spectacular. And one of those young leaders had a shirt on that said, "You are powerful and your voice matters." Right? From the mouths of babes, they're telling us. They're telling us. And so let's remember that. Let's remember our power. Let's remember our voice matters. And with that, then I ask, are you ready to make your voices heard? Do we believe in freedom? Do we believe in opportunity? Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, we win. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Keep on running 'cause